people aren't perfect. We make mistakes every day of our life. You can either decide to make it a grudge on someone or not. Annan states that to err is human, to forgive is not a company policy. I'm going to talk about examples of volleyball in a relationship and in a job situation. The first one with volleyball, everyone makes mistakes. On the court, you hit a ball out, you shank it, which is a pass where it doesn't go where it's supposed to go. Or you can double, which is when you set wrong and it makes a certain motion where it's not supposed to. So you can either forget your teammates, like forget the error they just made, maybe it's game point and they lose the game. You can either like just go up to them and make them happy and just be like, it's okay, like we'll always have next time, or you can just everyone be mad at each other and make that person feel worse. Another example is in a relationship. Would you, like, maybe it's the best relationship of your life for years, and your boyfriend accidentally calls you his ex-girlfriend's name, or says something about his ex-girlfriend. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, hold that against him and break up with him and ruin your life, like, and like the love of your life, like let them go, or just let it go, be mad for a little, and talk about it, eventually be okay. And then, which that comes to in a job. Just because one person makes an error, are you gonna fire them? Maybe it's not the biggest error, maybe it is. But what if they're the best employee you ever had? Are you gonna just take that step and look past it, and talk about it with them, or have them just be let go? I would prefer just to, well, everyone makes mistakes and you know that. No one's perfect. That's why you have to take charge and be okay with it. Another example is when you're in class and you fail a test. You make an error, don't you? And you can either learn from that mistake or like get on yourself and just no one forgive you. So this is why to make an error, you can either like someone can look past it or hold a grudge against you and like could actually ruin someone's life that makes you really depressed. This is why volleyball, job, and relationships are good examples of why an error is not the end of your life.
I know. Like stumbling over here.
All right, I like the opening statement. It's clear. You've got a point that you want to make. The transition to the quote and to the point of view that you have, though, as you listen back to it, it sounds a little bit awkward. I think most of that is in the pacing, and that seems to be the issue that comes up most frequently in your presentation, and so we'll talk about that again in just a second. There was a fine preview, but again, you sound a little bit like you're rushed while you're speaking. The first point that you had about the volleyball thing would be a little bit more helpful if you were talking about a real example and you had a personal experience that you could talk about. The problem is with a lot of the things that you've got here is they're all hypotheticals and you're kind of inventing examples in your head, which means that they're probably not going to have much vivid detail to them. When you talk from a personal experience, you remember who it was that this happened to, what they went through, what they did, why you were mad, how you felt about it, and it's a lot easier to talk about. When you kind of invent somebody, well, suppose a person makes a mistake and they're the best employee in the world, and are you going to lose them? And I'm going, well, if they were the best employee in the world, what kind of mistake would they make that would make me want to fire them? You could probably, you're going to think of an example later on. That's the way it always is. Everybody gives a better speech in the car on the way home, because they think, oh, I should have said that or should have said that. So it's really better, I think, if you work with real examples rather than the invented ones. But your invented ones were fine for the purpose that you were trying to get across, and the speech was nicely organized. You project pretty well. I think there's good variety in your voice. If you listen, I think you'll hear that you kind of have a cadence when you're speaking, where you get halfway through a sentence. It's not quite a full pause, but it's like a half pause, and then you get to the second half of the sentence, and it just never feels like it's flowing as smoothly as it should. It just feels a little more mechanical as a consequence. Your facial expressions are fine. Your gestures, you got a lot of descriptive gestures in the first part of the speech. I think you settled down a little bit in the second half of the speech. And you want to have gestures, but yours were almost, not quite maniacal, but they were really, there was a lot of them to begin with. And, I think you did a better job. You settled down a little bit more in the second half of the speech. See if you can pick that up when you watch back. And then, like I said, I thought you tied your point up pretty well. It did seem like you were throwing in an extra example at the end that you just thought of at the last minute. And going outside of your organizational structure, that feels a little bit awkward. If you can tie it into the last point that you're making, that would work more effectively. All right, thank you. All right. By the way, don't forget that you guys are supposed to, after you do your speech, you're not doing peer evaluations, you're doing self-evaluations, and your self-evaluation is supposed to be put in written form on your video online. So don't forget to go put your comments